Bro, this is why it's under appeal and they have not issued a sentence yet.
So in our country,
don't know what you're talking about.
I don't have me, Brian Shapiro, do a show called Pushing the Limits. I am an independent that is extremely anti-Donald Trump.
You just had this protest over the weekend, No Kings. One of the most effective protests we have seen in the history of the United States, as following the protest, there are no kings.
More people have been deported that are
not
criminals.
related to what you're saying.
I figure the prioritization
I think
would be
you
around
lack the
tracking
cognitive
and
ability to
identification.
connect the dots.
No, I'm not the president either. You're comparing me to Donald
Trump. This
Trump.
is not a real argument. This is
not a real argument.
It's certainly not a real
So
argument.
complain about something as the president for 9 years, but don't have any
indeed.
solutions. And you don't think that's a real argument.
Name every single president ever who complained about something and didn't solve the problem.
I think
if you want to talk about
be-
being fiscally responsible, the guy who you support got us $8.2 trillion in debt his first go.
Well, that's
You have no choice, and individuals are going to get negative.
Let's be fiscally responsible by gold plating the White House. Is that fiscally
Who's paying for it?
No, I'm not talking about the ballroom. I'm talking about gold plating the Oval Office.
What's your argument?
What's my argument?
You're a bootlicking fascist who likes government authority and federal agents?
Absolutely not.
Fire them all.
No, I'm actually a human being, and I feel like when people wake up and they go to work, they probably should get paid for it, Tim. That's the Republicans' responsibility. They have the House and the Senate. It's their job to try to negotiate with Democrats. They're putting it all on Chuck Schumer. This is all his fault.
He's the leader.
Yeah, I understand that, but who's in charge of the House? Who's in charge of the Senate?
Who?
We start off with 49% of the people that are working, that are offered health care, that can't afford it. Those are people that are struggling. You can look up those stats if you don't believe.
Let's try
30% of people that are working are not offered health care.
That is not the same thing. Again, non sequitur, bro. Stop. Okay. 30% of people not being offered by their job healthcare is not the same as Trump passing a bill will take healthcare away from people. You're saying things that are consistently just not. It's a non sequitur over and over and over again. It's like Donald Trump sending these troops and now the sky is cloudy. Oh, your mic's not on.
My mic's
You're
on.
being censored.
There you go.
I'm being censored by the deep state already for my pro-Trump beliefs.
If he wins his appeal, I will come on the show and I will say, Tim, I was wrong.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. And yes, this is not a Piers Morgan Uncensored, but we are doing the Culture War with Tim Pool. And we've got Brian Shapiro coming in and a couple of side characters, to be honest with you. You're going to see what I mean by that here in a little while. These people, they try to interject themselves into the debate, but they're kind of pushed out because it's, genuinely speaking, it's just Tim Pool versus Brian Shapiro. And Brian Shapiro gets utterly decimated in this thing, as does many liberals for the most part, because once again, you know, these liberals, they try to come in and they try to make these arguments, and it's always a non sequitur, straw man, or something like that, and they just can't make that argument, folks. They don't have logic on their side, or at least they don't have enough logic, and usually don't have facts either. Their facts are always skewed for some reason, or they're missing some facts that would actually change your opinion on certain situations or whatever it may be. So this is a fascinating debate, y'all, so y'all make sure and smash that like button for me, subscribe if you're new around here, and check out my regular videos where we go over news and politics, and I actually point out all the manipulations of the corporate press and actually show you what they're doing to manipulate you. So if you're interested in that, getting real news unmanipulated, stay tuned to this channel right here. Share this video anywhere and everywhere you can, and if you would be so inclined, click that join button, sign up, and become a member. That would be the best way to help this channel expand and grow. But without any further ado, folks, here's the debate.
My issues with this, number one, you have a lot of agents across the country that are not identifying themselves as agents. Outside of courtrooms, tackling people, outside of Home Depot, that's against the law. You have to identify yourself. Something needs to say that you're ICE. You know, you can't just go somewhere and tackle somebody and not say you're law enforcement. So that's a big issue, number one. Number two, most of the people, more than 50% of the people that are being detained by ICE and or deported are nonviolent criminals. We were told by the Trump administration that they were going to focus on very violent criminals.
Well, that's a non sequitur.
Well, but you're asking me what my issues are with this, and I'm just going through the list of.
So I'll push back on that one because whether or not they want to prioritize versus who they're actually deporting it's a non sequitur. I don't understand why. Trump said he was going to deport everybody. He is. It appears they are targeting criminals, and they are largely also in this process getting general criminal aliens.
So are you comfortable, Tim, with people that have never committed a violent crime or a felony being sent to El Salvador type prisons?
They're not all
Are you
going to El
comfortable with
Salvador.
that? Not all of them. I never said that, but some of them are. Are you comfortable?
That's a bit of a straw man.
Well, I'm just asking you if you're comfortable with that.
Am I comfortable in the circumstance where a criminal illegal alien who entered this country, and we don't know to which number, so I guess I could say there's certainly going to be errors in any and all law enforcement. Kamala Harris famously, I'm not saying you support her, but she famously had people kept in prison beyond their release dates, using them as slave labor and things like that. Actually, that's a bad example. I just don't like Kamala Harris. But mistakes happen in law enforcement. We want to mitigate them. They shouldn't happen. U.S. citizens being detained for 24 hours in New York shouldn't happen. But the question is of malice. So if, I don't know, to what degree are we going to accept nonviolent illegal immigrants being sent to what is it called? CICOT? What is it called?
CCOT.
CICOT. There you go. In El Salvador, and it's no nonviolent individuals should not. Then there's another layer to the question, and that is, what if the country will not accept them back? Where do we send them? Now it's getting really muddy and messy, because if we don't have extradition treaties or treaties in general for handing deportations of foreign nationals, well, they don't just get to stay here. So I'm not suggesting they should go to CICOT, but now we've got Kilmar going to, I guess, Uganda or whatever, Uganda.
Well, listen, I think 99% of the country would agree that if you're a violent criminal in this country illegally, you should be deported. I'm one of those people. I think there needs to be some sort of pathway to citizenship for people that are nonviolent criminals that have lived in this country for decades, some of whom do pay taxes. I think there's a better way to do it than the way the Trump administration is doing it. I want border security. I'm not one of those people that thinks that the border should be wide open. Okay,
How many times are we going to do amnesty though? This is like the fourth, right?
I understand that, but I also don't like it when Dr. Phil is there with a microphone making it a spectacle. I feel like there's glee in this. Obama deported a lot of people as well, but I don't think they enjoyed it. I feel like, and this is my personal opinion, that those in the Trump administration and Donald Trump are making it a spectacle. Like they're liking the fact that families are being separated. I think that's immoral.
Well, that's like an emotional reaction. That's not a fact-based.
Well, but
I can't debate how you feel about what Trump is doing.
You think it's emotional? Dr. Phil has said, "Hey, come on down here with Tom Homan and let's interview these people that have handcuffs on them."
You got a problem with Dr. Phil?
I have a problem with making it into a reality show. This is not a reality show. This is real life.
Agreed. Dr. Phil, you knock it off.
I'm not a Dr. Phil fan anyway, Tim. But listen, I just think you're asking me my thoughts on this whole situation, and I don't like the way Trump is going about it. Why is it that he wants white people from South Africa in this country with open arms, but he doesn't want black people from South Africa in this country? Why is that, Tim?
When did he say that?
Well, look at what he did. 10 South Africans were this.
10 people?
I think this was like 3 months ago, welcoming them with open arms with their families, but they all happen to be white. I find that very convenient.
Because there are white people being killed in South Africa.
Yeah, but why is it that he doesn't do the same for people of color? Let's welcome you with open arms.
Because the black people in South Africa are the majority and are the ones chanting "kill the Boer."
Yeah, the government there is a black nationalist government.
You don't find that okay?
You could say it's racial, but it's clearly also very politically aligned. Like the politics of the South African grievance politics and the communism versus the European descendant South Africans who are more free market and more in favor of property rights. So there's an obvious political overlap here.
And there was a white guy, just an illegal immigrant, he was a police officer, and they deported him. So it's like I don't think it lends itself to the argument when it's 10 South Africans or one white guy being deported.
Well, I think it comes down to compassion if we're talking about this situation. And there are people in Trump's administration, and I know this goes into the healthcare situation, but there are people that do not believe if you're an undocumented immigrant and you're dropped off at an ER and you need life-saving care, that you should not get that life-saving care, that we should be asking for your paperwork. That is not the country, Tim, that I want to live in. That is no compassion. I'm not saying undocumented immigrants should be getting free health care. And by the way, they don't qualify for Obama's subsidies anyway. But if somebody is dying and they're undocumented, okay, they should be able to get the care that they need in a hospital. And I'm okay paying for that.
I mean, that argument works if Biden didn't let in, on the low end, 10 million illegal immigrants.
Well, you could use the term let in. I'm not going to sit here and defend Biden when it comes to all the undocumented immigrants that came into this country. Clearly, he didn't do a good job.
There's a math question, right? So the famous saying, you must secure your own mask before securing the mask of the person sitting next to you. And that's a great analogy because when the pressure drops, if you're too busy trying to help someone else, you pass out and then no one gets
Let
help.
me flat out ask you, Tim, if somebody is undocumented in this country, I'm not even talking about a violent criminal, somebody who's in this country, undocumented immigrant, they're having a heart attack. Do you believe that if they're dropped off at an ER, that those doctors should not be asking them for their paperwork, that they should try to save their life first?
First and foremost, doctors should just render aid to anybody who's ailing. You don't, it's like
I agree, but there's some people that don't agree with you.
But it's not about an illegal immigrant. If like Tate had a heart attack, God forbid, at such a young
Got
age.
a lot of Arby's, so I mean.
I know. Okay, doctors.
So you eat like Trump, then? That's what you're saying.
Oh yeah.
Meat doesn't give you heart attacks anymore. It's not the
I
90s.
believe in life force. I think the Big Mac does something.
The issue
for
isn't
you.
illegal immigrants. The issue is literally anybody suffering. If a doctor said, "Well, hold on there, gosh darn minute, let me see some paperwork," that means citizens are going to be denied emergency health care.
Well, here's the deal.
Like you'll die before the doctor can treat you if they're worried about your paperwork.
I don't want to live in a country where somebody is dying and they ask for their paperwork first. Tim, I don't want to live in a country like that.
Because, like I said, it's it's not even a question of illegal immigrants. It's a question of literally anybody going to the hospital being stopped and before they're rendered aid. It's like he's a citizen. He's good. No, we don't have time for that.
Exactly, I agree with you.
So, but the bigger question is
People in the Trump administration do not agree with you.
Well, that's a bit of an extreme example, though, because in emergency circumstances, however, the argument of should illegal immigrants generally get medical treatment from our facilities at the taxpayer expense?
In the emergency room, I say yes.
In the case of absolute emergencies, indeed. What if someone shows up to the emergency room and they're like, something's wrong with my hand, it hurts?
Well, that's a different circumstance. Obviously, I'm not talking about, if somebody
You said in the emergency room.
Life-saving care. That's not life-saving care.
So this is the issue. Most of the people in the emergency room are not getting life-saving care.
Well,
So in the event someone's having a heart attack or bleeding out, they were shot, whatever, no one's going to stop, and no one should. They should just treat the person. But you go to the emergency room, what do you see? People are all sitting in chairs waiting.
Okay, so this debate for the first part of it, they kind of go all over the place. Brian Shapiro just is leading Tim Pool all over the place with all kind of different subjects and topics and everything. Like, it's wild. But talking about this, like, that doesn't exist. They are pretending, Democrats are pretending that a criminal alien could go into an emergency room if they get their arm cut off or something like that, and the doctors are going to be like, well, let me make sure you're a citizen first. That's not going to happen, folks. That falls well outside of reality. Anytime there's a life-threatening injury, they do the medical procedure first to stabilize you, to save your life, and then let's figure this other nonsense out later, right? So if we figure this other nonsense out later, then look, if you got to come out of pocket for that, hey, that's not on us. Look, you're not supposed to be in this country anyway, but they are going to save your life first. Like, that's the Democrat argument on this, and it doesn't make any sense because it doesn't align with reality. And that's pretty much the hang-up of the government shutdown right now. Democrats, they want those emergency subsidies for criminal aliens, for crying out loud. So, for the vast majority of people that go to the emergency room, it's not life-saving, for goodness sakes. Like, we all know this. A lot of people, they go to the emergency room on the weekends or whenever doctors' offices are closed because they can't see a doctor. We have urgent care facilities now that a lot of people are going to for these issues. So, that's a whole different story. But for the most part, they're going to treat you first and then figure everything else out later, right? They're not going to call ICE on any of these criminal aliens or nothing like that. But that's the hang up. Democrats want these people to be taken care of. They want the government to pay for this, and the government is not going to pay for this. Look, I'm sorry. They are in certain states, right? And Democrats are getting around this by having the state medical care, or, the state version of Medicare or Medicaid or whatever that may be, to pay for these things and then getting reimbursed from the federal government. And, Democrats use that, as they do, because they play semantic games. Their entire life is a semantic game, and saying, well, no, not a single federal dollar goes to criminal alien health care. And it's like, no, technically it doesn't, but it does go to the state, which the state then does subsidize these things. And so you can't tell me that I am not paying for a criminal alien in California because he broke his hand or something like that. You can't say that because it's not true when you follow the money. And that's what the whole hang up of this government shutdown is, which is complete nonsense if you ask me, but that's a whole different topic. We're going to get into that. Now, I like the first part of that debate talking about, what the Trump administration is doing. This is another thing that Democrats, they tend to play games on, like, oh, he said he was going to prioritize the worst of the worst. He's doing that. Where's your evidence that he's not? As a matter of fact, that's what's going on. Once again, the ICE agents, if they come across somebody who's in the country illegally when doing a raid somewhere, they cannot ignore somebody that's in the country illegally. They must take them into custody. Once again, and just because these people don't have a criminal record in the United States does not mean that they are a violent criminal. That just means they haven't got caught yet. Let's keep going.
That's my understanding. I don't believe this is a Chuck Schumer government shutdown. I do not believe that.
My understanding, so like the core of this debate over the government shutdown and the spending bill is that Democrats want to extend the ACA benefits to refugees, asylum seekers, and DACA recipients.
That's part of it, sure.
Republicans said absolutely not, because those are illegal immigrants.
Well, when you talk about asylum seekers, I think that's some gray area. But what Democrats want to put in place or to keep in place before the big and beautiful bill is being implemented. That's my basic understanding.
It's like Big Beautiful Bill number 2, because they did have the other one. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, look, I don't agree with the right blaming Chuck Schumer, calling it the Schumer shutdown. I understand the votes that they need. I understand how many Democrat votes they need. I get that. But the last government shutdown we had, last I remember, is back in 2019. We didn't have one under the Joe Biden administration. I could also tell you that if, this is not, they're putting it all on Chuck Schumer, the right, MAGA. They're putting it all on Chuck Schumer. This is all his fault.
He's the leader.
Yeah, I understand that, but who's in charge of the House? Who's in charge of the Senate right now?
Should they vote to get rid of the filibuster? I think so. I think just crush the filibuster and then Democrats have no argument. I actually agree with Democrats on this one. They're blaming the Republicans for the shutdown, and the Republicans are countering saying, well, it's because we need at least 60 votes for cloture. And I'm just like, or you get rid of the filibuster, and then you make sure Democrats never win another election.
I mean, are Republicans working hard? How many weeks were they on vacation? How many times did Mike Johnson say stay on vacation? Yeah, exactly.
That's the August.
Why can't they sit down and negotiate?
Recess.
Why is Hakeem Jeffries lying when he says Mike Johnson has not called him up to sit down and try to talk and negotiate? Is Hakeem Jeffries lying?
What's the negotiation? Like,
that's the Republicans' responsibility. They have the House and the Senate. It's their job to try to negotiate with Democrats. It's their responsibility.
This is a 2-to-tango situation, and
so why won't they sit down, Tim?
Because they don't need to.
They don't need to?
Indeed.
Look at all the people that aren't getting paid right now.
And Democrats could be like, fine, well, we won't give health care to illegal immigrants, and we'll give you the 5 votes.
You don't think that in Washington, D.C. right now, people don't need to negotiate and sit down and come to terms and get somewhere in the middle?
Well, this is how government shutdowns.
You're right. They could just abolish the filibuster and reopen government.
Okay, I understand that, but you're saying that you don't think that that Mike Johnson should be reaching out to Democrats when Democrats are reaching out to him and say, okay, listen, we might not get anywhere, but let's at least try.
Well, there's multiple factors here. First, I would say I already agreed. Republicans could shut this down in 2 seconds by ending the filibuster and the nuclear option. And everyone says, but Democrats will get back in power. Oh, yeah, fucking right. If Democrats get back in power, it's the least of their worries that they might ram stuff through the Senate. So maybe they should just, in the Senate, say, okay, filibuster's gone, government's open. The other issue is Republicans want the government shut down. And I don't care too much about the government shutdown. They want the government shut down because it's giving them pretext to start firing tons of people, which is exactly what Trump wanted to do.
You don't care about brave men and women in uniform not getting paid?
They're getting paid.
They got paid.
Okay, but for a little while they weren't getting paid. You don't care about.
No, they never missed a paycheck.
People at the airport, TSA agents, and people all over the country that are not getting their paychecks. You don't care about that?
Yeah, no, I don't.
There's been shutdowns.
What's your argument?
I would be
What's your
okay
argument?
with that.
Hold on. What's your argument?
What's my argument?
You're a bootlicking fascist who likes government authority and federal agents?
Absolutely not.
Fire them all.
No, I'm actually a human being, and I feel like when people wake up and they go to work, they probably should get paid for it, Tim.
Well, you can quit.
well, you can quit.
Yeah, see, I'm on the very libertarian spectrum of I don't think government should be as bloated as big as it is. And I actually voted for Trump because he said he was going to fire tons of people. So I'm fine with doing it slowly. But if Democrats are like, we want to give ACA benefits to non-citizens, so we won't reopen the government, and then Trump is like, I'm going to fire people.
Let's backtrack a little bit. Let's backtrack a little bit, Tim, for a moment. Hold on a second. Families and fathers and mothers that are working in all different types of different positions in government jobs, they rely on that paycheck, and they're not getting a paycheck because of a government shutdown, regardless of whether you blame the right or the left.
Should drop their illegal immigrants.
And your response to them would be, I don't care, quit your job.
Well, one of the responses I could say is stop relying on big daddy government to take care of you. My first statement is I'm sorry the Democrats did this to you. Okay, maybe if they didn't want to give ACA benefits to illegal immigrants, the government would be open. Now, Republicans could, as I already mentioned, end the filibuster right now and reopen government, but they don't want to because Trump wants to fire a ton of people. So I'm sitting back being like, well, it's what is it called? The Xanatos Gambit. I was reading about this the other day, where no matter the outcome, your side benefits. Trump's attitude is if Democrats want to give illegal immigrants health care under ACA and keep the government shut down, they won't give us the 5. I think they need, 6 votes?
6, I believe, yeah.
6 votes. And he's like, okay, then the government's shut down. Fine. I'm going to start firing people. Okay. Win-win.
All right.
Well, it's also important who's being fired, right? Because we can talk about police officers, civil servants, et cetera, which is the majority of government workers. But the people that he's really targeting are the 500,000 federal bureaucrats, and they're getting huge payout packages, which is fine. We could pay them 4 times their salaries to quit, and it would still be worth it because they're the ones that are managing the economy without accountability and destroying innovation and costing us unimaginable amount of.
It's just wild to be like. So I'll step back and give you my assessment. The TSA is bad. I've met a lot of TSA agents when I travel, and they're fans, and I respect that. But the agency itself, I think, is a bad expansion of government, and we complained about it when it happened. But the problem is, the government creates something, and then liberals defend it, or independents, or whatever your argument is, right? So amnesty. We get amnesty in the 80s and 90s and 2000s, and once again, it's always gonna be amnesty. At a certain point, you got to be like, guys, we're not doing it a 4th time. It's not going to happen. No amnesty. Everybody's got to go. You're a criminal alien. You got to get out. And then the same thing with government agents and government shutdowns. It's like we've expanded the executive branch. We've expanded federal authority. We've expanded federal law enforcement over and over and over again. And instead of being like, maybe at some point we need to stop and say we're spending too much and expanding government too much, we get the liberal side, which is, no, just this time we need amnesty. Whatever it may be, pay all of them now. Defending the TSA, the liberals were angry about the TSA when H.W. Bush was creating all this stuff.
Yeah, it's the only time I've ever been sexually abused multiple times. Which is actually a problem.
And I understand this because I've long talked about the problems in a post-capitalist society where, I met a homeless guy a long time ago in Chicago, old black guy, and I had some pizza left over from a restaurant. I asked him if he wanted it, if he was hungry. He said he was. I said, here you go, brother. And then I was like, can I ask you a question? Just curious how you ended up homeless. And he said, well, I'll give you the simple version. He worked at the post office for 20 some odd years, never really a high ranking guy or anything. Eventually they said they were going to be shutting down, his post office was going under restructuring or whatever. And so he didn't have a backup plan. He couldn't afford a retirement. So the first thing he does, he starts collecting some benefits, but then it's not enough to pay his rent and pay for food. He chooses between buying food or paying rent. He chooses buying food. Then he's late on rent. He pays what he can. Eventually he gets evicted, and that's it. And he said, man, let me tell you, he's like, my friends are dead. My family's long dead. I don't got anybody else, and eventually got nowhere to go. And I said, well, that's messed up. This guy didn't do anything wrong. How does he end up in a situation like this? I can respect the individual and these circumstances, but we also have to understand that we are building a system that is growing and growing and growing. And I'll put it like this, because I've experienced this as a business owner. When we try to look at costs, why are we spending so much money? You know what we find? There is never one thing you're spending too much money on. And so we're like, What are we doing over here with this skateboard stuff? Are we spending too much? Like, honestly, we're not really spending that much money at all. Okay, well then what about some of these shows over here? Really? It's a couple of grand. And I'm like, it's a snowflake and an avalanche. No one is ever going to be happy when you have to do the cuts, because it's going to affect so many individuals, and an individual's worth is substantially more important than the amount of money you take by cutting the program. But when you are cutting down costs, sometimes you have no choice, and individuals are going to get negatively
So let's be
impacted.
fiscally responsible by gold plating the White House. Is that fiscally
Who's paying for it?
No, I'm not talking about the ballroom. I'm talking about gold plating the Oval
ballroom.
Office.
And who's paying for it?
Yeah, well,
I
if
think
you want to
that's
talk
gonna
about being
be-
fiscally responsible, the guy who you support got us $8.2 trillion in debt his first go.
Well, that's
come
that's
on, bro.
when
We're not
you
gonna
get
talk
into the
about
other
one
side of this
president's debt.
equation.
And that right there's the current problem with Democrats, folks. They want to continually keep increasing spending. And Republicans are looking at the national debt and they're looking at our deficit spending and they're like, hang on, we can't keep doing this. Something has to give, folks. And this is one reason why I support Donald Trump, because he's taking certain agencies of the federal government and reducing them down to legally minimized requirements, right? And that's it. Like the Education Department, USAID, and all these other entities that we don't need to function. And he's minimizing this. Now, the argument about renovating the White House, that's something totally different. Like, sure, I understand your arguments here, but every president does this. Like, I understand the ballroom's being funded by something totally different, but, renovating the White House is not. But that is also a drop in the bucket. But that is a criticism of Donald Trump. He's spending money where he doesn't need to be spending money. And, this is another issue with increasing the military's budget. That's being increased as well. And we're not reducing other agencies enough. We're not reducing the deficit enough. Folks, I talk about this all the time. $1.8 trillion deficit spending. We can't continue this. This is completely unsustainable. And the insane fact to Democrat policy, they want to increase spending, folks. They want to give criminal aliens health care and all this other nonsense. We can't do that. We're not going to go around increasing taxes to cover these people because these people are not supposed to be in the country. And Democrats, I believe, my personal opinion, they want to keep the government shut down. This is why they're introducing legislation to fund SNAP, so they don't get browbeat by their own constituency, for goodness sakes. So they're trying to minimize the damage to their base, and that's it. Because the only states that are supposedly getting funding for SNAP was the 26 Democratic-led states that sued the federal government to fund the SNAP benefits with contingency funds, for crying out loud. It's ridiculous, y'all. They just want to minimize the damage to their own. But this government shutdown is intentional, because think about it like this. What do the Democrats hate the most? What are they screeching the most about? Oh, with the deportation operation. Well, if ICE agents go unpaid, do you think they're going to continue to show up to work? Sure, they might do that for a little while, but do you think they're going to go a month, 2 months, 3 months without a paycheck? No, of course not. They're going to have to provide for their families. They're going to go look for work elsewhere. I think that's the plan for Democrats. They have no signs, whatever, of any logical argument why they should continually keep the government shut down. And they are intentionally doing it, folks. They voted 13 times to keep the government shut down. Why the argument for the ACA subsidies doesn't make any sense, because that's an argument that can be made later in the year. We've got another whole 2 months to the rest of this year for them to debate ACA subsidies. And all they would have to do is agree. Look, let's agree that no criminal alien gets ACA subsidies, right? That the states do not subsidize criminal alien health care from federal dollars. That's all they have to agree to. And then Republicans will probably sign off on these emergency subsidies or whatever. So, yeah, the argument is not there. They are intentionally keeping the government shut down, folks, because they want the federal government to suffer, because they want Trump to be hamstrung. Think about it, folks. They hate Trump. They hate everything he stands for, which by extension means they hate everything that America stands for. Because law and order, that's what America stands for. That's what this country was built upon. Blind justice, for crying out loud. And all these things, right? Putting America first and all that, right? So they don't care about anything, folks, but I've been rambling, so let's go on to the next section.
So you want accountability for criminals. Is that right, Tim?
Yes.
Okay. Then why would you support a 34-count felon?
He's not a felon.
This is the craziest whataboutism I've ever seen.
What was he charged with?
Not whataboutism.
What's the criminal charge?
Is he a 34-count felon, convicted
not.
felon? Yes or no?
No.
Yes, he is.
No, he's not.
He wasn't sentenced, but he was
Nope.
convicted by a jury. Was he
Nope.
not?
It's not.
Was he found guilty or not guilty of
You-
34 counts?
What were the charges?
I'm asking you a question.
The answer is no.
Why do you answer the question? Maybe
answer-
you're the one with the cognitive difficulties.
The
Why don't you
answer is
my
no.
question?
The answer is
So-
no. The answer is no again, no again, no again. Now tell me what he was charged with.
So wait, the jury did not find Donald Trump guilty.
Correct. Yes.
I mean, the earth isn't flat, Tim.
What was he charged with?
What? Wait, you just said a jury did not find him guilty.
Indeed, that's correct.
Where are you getting that from?
Because Trump was never actually charged with any real crimes.
Okay, so you're saying
So hold on. Is your argument? Did a group of people come together
whether
and
you
say,
agree or not is not the question. Okay.
well, so we're having a conversation on the logic and the facts of the matter. And the facts of the matter is Trump was not legitimately charged with any crime, so he can't be found
that's your
guilty.
opinion. That's your opinion.
It's a fact.
Okay, it's a fact.
It is indeed a
So
fact.
a jury found him guilty.
Of what?
You're wrong.
Of what?
Okay.
Of what?
You say
Of what?
34 count
Of what?
felon.
Of what?
Okay.
Of
Well,
what?
did he
Of
not?
what? Of what?
I'm answering
Of
it. I'm answering it. Did he not make up and falsify business records?
He did not.
He did not. Okay.
That wasn't the case. Did you watch? Did you check?
I did.
So who actually?
So he
was
didn't break
accused-
the law.
Who was accused of it?
He didn't break the law.
Who he did not. Well,
Okay.
perhaps
So
maybe.
in your opinion, perhaps
maybe
Okay,
no.
thank you.
Okay, stop. I'm going to mute you if you try and play that stupid stuff because you interrupt me while I'm making the point that perhaps
Go ahead.
maybe
I'm listening.
perhaps maybe it was a misdemeanor falsification of business records from his CFO. Perhaps maybe. Don't cut me off when I say perhaps maybe to change the context of what I'm saying. Donald Trump was accused of misdemeanor falsification of business records by instructing a lower staffer we don't know he actually instructed. All because of Cohen making a claim about paying Stormy Daniels. This cannot be upgraded to a felony because it's what's called requiring an underlying crime, which never in the history of the United States has been done before. Donald Trump, in this charge, was convicted falsely.
In your opinion.
It's not an opinion. It is a fact.
So the judge got it wrong. The
Indeed.
our courts got it wrong.
Absolutely.
But you got it right.
What was the underlying crime?
The problem I have with
Answer
this
the
conversation-
fucking question.
What was the underlying
Yes.
crime? 34 counts.
Of
okay?
what?
Okay. Falsifying business records was certainly
Underlying
one of
crime,
them.
name it.
I don't have it right in front
There
of me.
isn't one.
Okay. But so you're saying that the judge got it wrong, the jury got it wrong, he had the right to
For
defend
the love
himself
of all
in a
that is
courtroom.
holy,
They
this
all
is
got
the
it wrong.
problem with
Okay.
this country.
They all got it wrong.
What is the underlying crime?
He was convicted in a court of law, Tim.
What? Oh my God. What is the underlying crime?
What is the underlying crime?
Okay, let's stop.
I think Tim wants you to point it out.
Wait.
Highlights.
Watch it.
Yeah,
What?
go ahead. Go ahead.
What was he charged with? Just give me the sentence. Give me the single phrase.
What I know is that he was a 34 count felon convicted.
Oh
in a
my
court of
God!
law. That's what I know.
What was he
I don't have
charged
the
with?
case. I don't have the case right in front
You
of
don't
me.
know.
I don't have the case right in
You
front
are
of
in
me.
a cult.
I'm
You
in a
are a
cult?
cultist.
How am I a
Yes.
cultist?
You don't know what you're talking about, and
I
you're
don't know what I'm
zealously
talking
arguing
about.
for it.
I don't know what I'm talking about. You're the one who just looked
Okay.
me in the eye and told me that a jury did not find him guilty. Now you can
Stop.
you
Let's try this
disagree
again.
with it. You
What was
can-
he charged with?
Again,
You don't know? Do you know or do you not know?
he falsified business records. Okay.
What's the charge?
I don't have the charges.
You
right
don't
in front of
know,
me.
do you?
I don't.
Maybe you should then
don't have
say,
the
I
charges
don't
right in front of
know.
me.
Maybe. How about you say this? I don't know.
You can tell me what
You
the
say, I don't
charges
know?
are, but he was still convicted in a court of law.
Do you wanna say,
can
I don't know?
disagree with it.
He
I don't
was-
have it right in front of me. That doesn't mean that I'm wrong with what I'm saying.
It
He was still
certainly
convicted.
does because you don't know what you're talking
So
about.
he wasn't found guilty in a court of law.
He was not found guilty in a court of
That's
law.
the only point I was making.
Of a criminal action for which falsification was an aggravated factor. You don't know what you're talking about.
I don't know what I'm talking about.
It is one of
So-
the most controversial cases in U.S. history where for the first time an aggravated charge was placed without the government proving an underlying case. They upgraded misdemeanors,
Okay.
which require an underlying crime, but they never proved a crime
So let me ask you a
actually
question.
happened.
Then why couldn't his attorneys prove that in a court of law?
They did! Bro, this is why it's under appeal and they have not issued a sentence yet.
So in our country,
You don't know what you're talking about.
I don't know what I'm talking about. Oh, here's what I do.
You can't even name the charges. You don't know who
Just because I can't name the charges doesn't mean he wasn't convicted in a court
who
of law.
falsified the records.
Well, he didn't falsify the records per se, but people that were doing that were
Okay,
behind.
all right,
it
let's
were.
slow down. Let's slow down and calm down. You don't know the facts of the case.
Do you know all the facts in the case?
I know
you have more.
plenty of,
you have more evidence than what the jury heard.
I have a good plenty of more evidence than you to found my arguments.
Okay, but did you have the evidence that the jury had?
Indeed, it was all released.
Oh, you had all the evidence that the jury saw.
So we're not going to speak in absolutes. The American public was privy to the information and the jury testimony, and juries gave.
All right, so he's innocent. He didn't do anything wrong. The left went after him. It was George.
Make a real argument.
Okay, sure. You have a 6-year-old daughter, right? Which, by the way, congratulations.
No, I don't.
Oh, I thought you had a daughter. I
do, but she's not 6.
Well, by the way, congratulations on that.
I appreciate it.
So
now we're nice again.
I like good-spirited debates. I like this stuff. So, Tim, if your daughter was 12 or I don't know how old she is, but if she was 12 or 13 years old and she was in a pageant and a creepy man went in there without her permission and talked about it sexually on the Howard Stern show, which he did.
Okay, wait, hold on.
Yep.
Were we
I don't know what's funny about that.
Were we just talking? We're just talking about the court case.
We're talking about the moral aspect of Donald Trump now because we've talked about morals.
Oh, he's a pig.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you have
he's got serious decorum problems and attitude problems.
Forget about
He did stop World War III, though.
Forget about the legal argument for a moment, okay? Forget about the legalities of Donald Trump. I'm just asking.
So he's not a felon.
Why should we forget about that?
Well, because I'm asking about morals now. I'm talking about the moral aspect of why I don't support him, okay? And I'm trying to have a conversation with you about morals. Are you comfortable? You're comfortable with the leader of the free world being a liable sexual abuser who's had dozens of women that have accused him of rape or sexual assault, including his ex-wife in court documents?
That's all bad.
It's all really, it's kind of really bad, isn't it?
You know what? I have a trouble with the United States of America, especially because Barack Obama murdered a 16-year-old American citizen by bombing a civilian restaurant in Yemen. Whataboutism?
I asked you a question about Donald Trump.
I agreed with you.
So why would you support somebody like that?
For the same reason that people probably support Obama murdering children. The issue
about Kamala? Name me one thing that Kamala Harris has done in her life.
Let's slow down and say the issue at hand is we always call this the lesser of two evils, and we could
see, and that's where people like Tim Pool will get you, because you could go out and read a headline saying Donald Trump convicted of 34 felony counts of falsifying business records or whatever, and then you hear Tim Pool saying, no, he didn't, as a matter of fact. And you're like, well, I read the headline. And Tim's like, yeah, but do you know the case? And you're like, not really. You don't know what's going on with this. The interesting fact on all this is, the underlying crime, which was unprecedented for them to actually elevate falsifying business records, which was a misdemeanor, as he said. They didn't have to prove that. And as a matter of fact, all 3 of those quote-unquote crimes that he was investigated for, he was exonerated. They said he did not commit those underlying crimes that elevated a misdemeanor to a felony. That's why it's all fake. All of it's fake. This will never get through on appeals. It's going to be overturned. There were several due process violations in that particular case by itself that could overturn this, not to mention the fact that the jury instructions violated due process because the jury did not have to agree on which one of the 3 underlying crimes that elevated this to a felony. They didn't have to agree. They didn't have to be unanimous on that. These 3 could have picked one, these 4 could have picked another one, and the other 3, they could have, just said, screw it. Picked one, whatever, it doesn't matter. They could have just said, I don't care. And they would have still found him guilty regardless. That, to me, does not sound like justice, does it? No, that sounds like a weaponized court that wants to convict a man and just don't care about what the actual crime was. It's fascinating, y'all. It really is. He was exonerated on the underlying crimes. The FEC investigated him for any of the federal election campaign violations or whatever. So all of it was bogus, folks. All of it was bogus. The underlying crimes did not exist. He did not commit those crimes. Therefore, the misdemeanor that was elevated to a felony did not exist. It was all fake. And Tim Pool, he doesn't kind of do a good job of explaining that, but if you put it all together, that's how it works out, folks. The underlying crimes, he never committed those. They couldn't prove he ever committed those, but the argument from the court is, it doesn't matter if he committed the underlying crime or not, right? It doesn't matter. The argument from the court is, was the intent to commit that crime there? Well, hang on. Now we get into this whole intent territory. That's how they base their judgment, was upon intent. Did he intend to commit this crime, but didn't commit it to elevate a misdemeanor to a felony of falsifying a business record? And that's how they got him. And I don't think that's going to stick. I think that's a novel legal theory that falls well outside of the bounds of jurisprudence, in my opinion. I'm not a legal expert, though. But once again, I've looked into this case just as much as Tim has, and I find many, many holes in this case. Once again, folks, not to mention all of the due process rights violations. There's several due process rights violations. But just the novel theory that they were going to use that, he intended to violate campaign finances or whatever. That's why, with the whole payment of the Stormy Daniels payment, the hush-hush money payment, right? That's how the falsifying business records came into play. He intended to violate the campaign regulations or whatever. What? But he didn't violate those campaign regulations. That was all legal. You can actually have somebody, you can send somebody a hush money payment to shut them up. That's totally legal. And you can do it with you can't do it with campaign dollars. But that's the problem. He didn't do it with campaign dollars. Michael Cohen did it out of his personal account. Michael Cohen was his lawyer at the time. And later, like months later, he paid Michael Cohen for his services. That's where they were trying to say the falsifying of business records was. That Michael Cohen did this, and that was the campaign violation or whatever. And then Donald Trump paid him after becoming president, as a matter of fact, and they could never prove it was with campaign dollars. They never could prove that because it wasn't with campaign dollars. That's what the FEC investigation was. So that was one of the underlying crimes that elevated the business records, the falsifying business records or whatever, to a felony. It was all bogus. If they would have went in for just the falsifying business records, the misdemeanor falsifying business records, that's an open and shut case. He did that. Boom. Or, whoever his CFO was did that. That's an open and shut case. The fact you're going to try to elevate this to a misdemeanor, and it wasn't they were trying to get justice, folks. That's not what it is. Because at the same time in New York, at that very same moment, they were letting criminals go, violent criminals that were shoving people in front of subway trains. Yeah, they were letting those people out of jail on their own recognizance, which is absurd. They didn't care about justice at all. They wanted Donald Trump to be hamstrung so he couldn't campaign. We all know this, folks. That's why that whole case is bogus. That's why all the cases against Trump are bogus. Because there was a definite political motivating factor behind all of it, folks. Let's go on to the next section.
The National Guard.
If that's the case, then why didn't Donald Trump? If that's the case, then why was Donald Trump able to call in the National Guard with the snap of a finger in D.C.? A few months ago? The argument from the right is always, why didn't Nancy Pelosi call in the National Guard? Why was Donald Trump able to call in the National Guard
he would have been able to if it was more than a few hour process. But
I think the difference.
Interesting person that got left through the cracks.
Real quick, just to address that. Sorry, put a pin. The deployment of the National Guard into D.C. is a long, drawn-out process for a long period of time. Trump, the day of, being like, "Oh man, maybe we should have something."
So why do you blame Nancy Pelosi then? Why would he blame Nancy?
I don't.
I'm not saying you did.
But Pelosi did say on camera.
It's long and drawn out.
What did she say?
I heard what she said, but she's an old lady. She says a lot of crazy.
An old guy.
By the way, to be clear, I don't support Nancy Pelosi either. I despise.
Look.
I despise Ilhan Omar. I despise.
I guess I'm getting to the point that there were other potential.
Blame Nancy Pelosi though.
No, forget Nancy. There were other potential motives to make this thing blow up, right? Because they can obviously use it against Trump for various reasons.
Well, yeah, they should.
And the Biden DOJ even prosecuted this cop, Shane Lamond. And whenever you have a protest, you have someone in the police department who's coordinating with the protesters, right? This is when we're going to show up. This is what we're going to do. This is where we're going to try and confine ourselves, right? And they have this relationship. This guy was working super hard to keep the violence down, keep it from going crazy. And the Biden DOJ charged him for colluding with protesters.
I'm sure you
based
can
on
find
the
cases
fact that they have this communication.
I don't deny
it's
that.
still leftover.
I don't deny that there are cases
he didn't get pardoned
that
by
people
Trump.
were overcharged. I don't deny that.
But we don't need to argue J6 because the rioters were bad.
Does it happen if Trump doesn't lie about the 2020 election?
The
Right? January
injuries
6th
were
happened?
also
Yes, it
inflated.
does.
The one cop who the media showed this cop on the ground surrounded.
Let me say this: January 6th absolutely would have happened even if Donald Trump wasn't talking about
disagree.
it.
I
You know how I know I'm
completely
right?
disagree.
Because I predicted it in September before the election even happened.
But I just respectfully, I disagree with you on that.
In September of 2020, I predicted that if Donald Trump didn't win the election, his supporters are going to go to D.C., it's going to be nuts, and they're going to storm the White House or something like that.
I just respectfully disagree with you. I think if Donald Trump didn't lie, which, by the way, he did about the 2020 election, he's the only president in American history that has not conceded an election. Okay, he lied. Hillary Clinton conceded the next day.
That's not correct. He's not. He's the only president who never conceded an election.
He conceded. He just thought it was fake.
No, he never conceded.
I'm pretty sure he never conceded, but
he
he's
never
not the only
conceded. You're
one.
wrong. Who else didn't concede an election? Maybe I'm wrong.
Well, I suppose I'll give you that one. Saying the words "I concede" versus the legal challenge.
No, Hillary Clinton and Kamala Harris picking up the phone and
Which
saying
is my
congratulations.
point. If you're arguing the words "I concede," I said I will give you that point.
Yeah.
I'm talking about whether or not the actions taken after the fact were of someone.
So you
who's
think,
conceded.
so Tim, this is interesting. You think that January 6th happens even if Donald Trump concedes the election and says Joe Biden won a free and fair election? You still think there'd be that many people storming the Capitol that are trying to overthrow a free and fair election?
Yes.
I respectfully disagree.
Because
with that.
I will stress it again. In September of 2020, on my show,
I know you said that. That's your opinion. That's fine.
So my point is, the things that were happening in this country led me to believe, 2 months before the election, that Trump supporters would not accept a Biden victory, no matter what, whether or not. And this is irrespective of Trump saying anything about the election being stolen because it hadn't happened yet.
That
was correct.
Again, I respectfully disagree.
I was vaguely wrong at the White House.
If Donald Trump conceded and he said we can't be violent and he toned down the rhetoric and he lowered the temperature, I guarantee you January 6th doesn't happen. It happened. He did not concede. He said the Democrats stole it. Joe Biden stole it. It rigged. It was rigged. He still says that today. It's a fucking. I'm sorry. I shouldn't swear.
I was swearing too.
I apologize. It's a joke, Tim. It's a joke. There's no evidence of widespread. He still says it. That he won. Don't you have a problem with that? You don't have a problem with that.
Why did Biden get so many more votes than Kamala? Should they have run him if that was actually a true count?
What?
Well,
Say
but
again?
you think it was stolen?
Yeah.
I think it was
it's
ballot
very
harvesting.
possible. I don't know exactly what, but it's also possible this was the first
God.
election that was stolen.
So let's do this, right? So the issue is, of course, I've never argued the election was stolen or that there were
Didn't say
Chinese
you did.
ballots. I'm not saying you did. I'm making this point.
Yep.
However, I have argued that we are in a constitutional crisis following the 2020 election because the failures of the Supreme Court to pick up Texas v. Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
So the issues at play from the Trump administration, largely not the ancillary groups like Mike Lindell or anything like that, have to do with violations of the Constitution in the furtherance of a Democrat victory. These questions have never been answered, and now we are in a nebulous state where it's going to impact us very heavily in 26 and 28, especially with the Voting Rights Act going to the Supreme Court. I see this as a catalyst for the complete factionalization, balkanization, or otherwise, or collapse of the United States. And I largely blame the Supreme Court in 2020.
Okay. I mean,
are you familiar with Texas v. Pennsylvania?
I am, and I don't necessarily disagree with you. And by the way, we were in some very weird times during COVID at that moment. But the problem that I have, Tim, and going back to what I said before, is that the man continues to lie, and a president's words do matter. What he says matters.
They all lie. They're all lying.
They all lie.
Indeed. You think every president
About a presidential election?
They're lying about a variety of things.
Okay, I agree.
I didn't say singularly.
I agree that a lot of
Politicians lie. News at 11.
I agree. But I also would say there's a difference between that and not conceding an election. And then we have, January 6th, which takes place. People died that day. And
what's Trump's argument about the election?
He says the election was rigged.
Well, like
he hasn't shown any evidence or proof that it was rigged. He
is-
claims the mail-in ballots when he told his own supporters not to do mail-in ballots. And then he claims that the mail-in ballots were rigged and all these votes were counted in the middle of the night. The bottom line is when we look at Mike Lindell, who I think is a clown, and we look at Dinesh D'Souza, who I think is a clown, and we look at these people as a source to, I think the election was stolen. It is a joke. It's never been proven in a court of law. None of the judges found any merit. I think it was like 0-61.
Well, I like Mike and Dinesh, but I agree that they're wrong. And because I've consistently made the arguments, which apparently I just learned from Mike Benz, made me a target of Democrat NGOs in the Atlantic Council.
That's not good.
Because in 2020, my argument was they didn't fake ballots, they didn't rig voting machines, they ballot harvested.
Right.
There's videos of it. And it's legal in most places.
Pressler would probably agree with you on that.
But it's legal in most places. And so the issue was Democrats did a massive, so you had universal mail-in votes, which made ballot harvesting substantially more effective. And then they went and they collected ballots. There are a handful of places where this is illegal, but it's typically legal or only restricted to 3 ballots per person. Dinesh D'Souza made the argument that people were ballot harvesting to a great degree and then dumping them. And that may be the case. We don't know.
Why is it when Trump loses, so many MAGA Republicans won't accept it, but when Trump wins, everything must have gone okay?
Because some people are in a cult.
Okay.
Well, and it was accepted.
I agree.
And there's a lot of suspicious stuff, right? So it's like, can we fix that suspicious stuff around our election processes, and then we can solve this problem of losing trust in the system, et cetera?
When Trump won, I accepted it. I didn't like the result, but I accepted it.
If the judiciaries and the executors of various states did not illicitly alter the rules of the election, Trump probably would have won.
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
And actually, I don't know is a fair answer, but we can at least say Texas v. Pennsylvania needed to be answered, and the Supreme Court are a bunch of cowards.
Okay, so that's interesting. But to address the beginning of that where they were talking about the National Guard or whatever, like there's a vast difference of deploying the National Guard out into the city for crime reasons, so you can try to reduce crime because the presence of the National Guard in and of itself will reduce crime. Deploying them out to the city for that reason and deploying them to the Capitol are vastly different things. You know, Nancy Pelosi, or the Speaker of the House, has the authority over that area. That's like their sovereign territory or whatever. So Donald Trump would have to go through, and it would have to be authorized by the Speaker of the House, whether you can deploy National Guard to Capitol grounds. That's the people's house. That's a whole sovereign territory in and of itself. So that whole argument that, oh, well, he can deploy the National Guard to the city quick, fast, and in a hurry. Sure, it's kind of a long, drawn-out process, but it can be expedient, expeditiously implemented or whatever. It can be done pretty quick, and Donald Trump did that. But you can't deploy them to the Capitol grounds. And Donald Trump offered the National Guard, and Nancy Pelosi turned it down. Once again, I think they wanted this to happen. Honestly, because once again, that's been the biggest political bludgeon that they've used to go after Donald Trump with. I mean, 2 federal criminal indictments came down the pipeline just from January 6th. Now, they had no idea that Trump supporters were going to get violent. But once again, folks, if you don't prepare for the incoming storm, you can't go after the storm, for goodness sakes, for destroying your property. I mean, once again, I'm not trying to exonerate anybody that was violent or whatever. Donald Trump has already done that because of other issues or whatever, but I find it fascinating that they try to make that argument. It's a nonsensical argument. Now, getting back to the whole election being stolen nonsense, yeah, Trump speaks nebulously, I guess you could say. He talks about fraud and all this other stuff, the mail-in ballots and blah, 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 blah. Well, there are issues with these things, but I don't think that's what he's talking about, because I say to this day that election absolutely was stolen, but it was stolen legally, right? Democrats went from state to state to state, and that's what they were talking about with Texas v. Pennsylvania. They went and changed the rules to benefit Democrats because Donald Trump was out there saying, don't vote by mail, go in person, blah, 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 blah. And Democrats were like upping the hell out of their ground game to do ballot harvesting. This is why Republicans lost in 2020. That's my fervent belief. And I think that's what Donald Trump was talking about, because when he says fraud, they were fraudulently going around from state to state to state, sometimes in violation of state constitutions. Right? They were doing it outside of the chain of command or whatever, that, outside the legislature. They were just changing rules and changing laws willy-nilly. They had an entire group. We went over the whole stealing of the election nonsense. I made a whole video. I made 2 videos about it. 2 videos about the same subject, essentially. I did one when I first started doing this, and then once I got better at actually speaking to a camera and being able to articulate my points a lot better, I made another video about this. It's how the Democrats won the 2020 election, or how they stole the 2020 election. It's a very interesting video. I suggest everybody go watch it. But That's what they did. They went from state to state, and that's what Donald Trump was talking about with fraud, because that is fraudulent. They were playing dirty games. But once again, they changed the rules to make those dirty games legal. And that's what Trump is getting at there. If it were not for the ground game of the Democrats in 2020, Donald Trump, in a standard election cycle, would have won that election. He would have barely edged out Joe Biden. So once again, Joe Biden was showing signs of dementia even back then. We all could see it. Democrats ignored it. They ignored it for the whole 4 years, and now there's a butt ton of evidence coming out saying that, yeah, Joe Biden wasn't there. You have his staffers coming out saying, yeah, we saw signs of Joe Biden's mental decline. And, what's fascinating about that, I just did a video the other day. Karine Jean-Pierre. No, I'm sorry, not Karine Jean-Pierre. Had her on my mind for some reason. But Kamala Harris was talking with Jon Stewart on his podcast the other day and said that Joe Biden was fully capable of serving another 4 years as president of the United States. Like, are you serious? She said there's a difference between, running for a presidential campaign and serving as president. And I'm like, yes, there is. But, he wasn't capable of either. I'm sorry. The state Joe Biden was in was not a very good state. It's elder abuse, in my opinion. But, getting back to the whole Donald Trump situation, Donald Trump saw a lot that we didn't. A lot of evidence that didn't come out until much, much later, like with the Chinese driver's license thing, right? Now, that wasn't enough to affect the election. But you got to look at it from Donald Trump's perspective. You see Democrats going, they've got this posse of Democrats going from state to state to state to state to change the rules, to open up ballot harvesting, right, to lax signature verification and all this other nonsense. Counting the mailed-in ballots, whether they're post-dated or not, even when they come in late, right? Donald Trump's looking at all this and like, okay, so they're trying to rig this election. And he's absolutely convinced by this, right? And he sees all this evidence. We didn't know about any of this at the time, right? We didn't know that Texas, we knew Texas was suing Pennsylvania, but we didn't have the particulars of the case until much later after the election. And that's the reason, that's the impetus for January 6th, right? That's the reason, because we found all this evidence. Now, there was a lot of misinformation going around about actual fraud, which there was some, and Donald Trump won most of those cases, which it wasn't, once again, it wasn't enough to overturn the election. Wasn't even close, to be honest with you. But, that's not the fraud that Donald Trump was actually talking about. That's just what they could catch, and when they catch it, they're going to bring it. So it is what it is. But it's a straw man from Democrats. They try to make that argument that Donald Trump is talking about fraudulent votes, but he's not. The fraud is the Democrats actually rigging the game, rigging the procedures of the election, and not necessarily the election itself, right? Because ballot harvesting should be illegal. I think that's wrong, right? They make it legal, but, there's no way to enforce a lot of this. You lose chains of custody with these ballots, with people just going willy-nilly to people's residences and picking up ballots and dropping them off in a box. That's garbage, if you ask me, because once again, they could be set up to go to Trump supporters' houses and get those ballots, those mail-in ballots. And they're like, well, we're going to go drop these off for you and just throw them in the freaking trash. There's no way you could know any different. Absolutely. So, there's so much that goes on with ballot harvesting. In and of itself, it should be outlawed. It promotes uncertainty in that election just because of the unknowns, right? We just don't know if these people actually dropped off the ballots or if they faked a bunch of ballots. Sure, we can figure that out later, but once, everything goes through and we don't find it until much later, what are you going to do about it then? Once a president has been already sworn in for a couple of months or whatever, how are you going to figure that out after the fact? How is that going to work out? Then, the other side, they're going to cry foul, blah, 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 and it could be just a bad situation, right? It could start a war, as a matter of fact. But, it's fascinating, and that's the argument from Trump, is that it wasn't the fraud and all this other stuff are criminal aliens, even though that is a thing. And Democrats, once again, with everything Democrats do, they promote insecurity in the election, right? It's just impropriety all over the place with trying to get criminal aliens to vote in local elections. But no, they don't vote in federal elections, and we've talked about that at length as well. Like, you think that polling machine is going to delineate between a local candidate and a federal candidate just because it's illegal for a non-citizen to vote in federal elections, but it's legal for them to vote in state or local elections? You think that polling machine is going to delineate between a person that, they can't vote for the president or Congress or anything like? No, I'm sorry. Those polling machines don't do that. That's why we should take, I think, elections should be run by the states, but they should be somewhat streamlined. Like, we should take the Florida model, because Florida, they revamped their whole system after 2000 or whatever, or was it 2004? I forget, one of those. And they can have the results, right? They're like the third or fourth largest state in the country, and they can have their results like 3 or 4 hours after the polls close, folks. Boom. And it's very secure, very quick, and it's accurate, right? Why can't we do that nationwide? Well, Democrats are going to cry foul over that. We have our own sovereignty over here, and blah, 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 blah. It's all nonsense, y'all. It really is. And once again, they promote insecurity in the election consistently by arguing against voter ID, and they want universal mail-in ballots and all this other nonsense, giving the opportunity for fraudsters to inject themselves into that election and mess things up. That's all I'm going to say about that, and I think that's all I got on this one. So you guys do me that favor, smash that like button for me, subscribe if you're new around here, share this video anywhere and everywhere you can, because I love debates. I love injecting myself into the debate to interject into the arguments to clarify points or just make my own point clear, obviously, right? Because I do this on weekends for fun, and I love doing it. But you guys click that join button for me. I need y'all's help. You can see we're struggling to grow around here. So y'all do that for me. And you guys remember that God loves each and every one of you out there, and he has a plan for all of us. You may not know what that plan is, but it's there. I can assure you it's there. But you guys try to have a good day and stay legitical. Peace.